Next, let's take a look at modifying material options by switching to comp number 3, material options. Here inside this composition, we simply have an ambient light and a spotlight with a white solid. We'll go into our project source materials, then from our 3D renders, add the goldfish to our composition. Now we'll need to make the goldfish 3D in order for it to accept lights. We'll open up the material options for the goldfish by typing AA on the keyboard. Now here again, we can see that the cast shadows are turned off by default. We can turn these on, and by turning them on, we can see the influence of the ambient light inside the shadows. The shadows are no longer black, but have a little bit of an orange cast to them. We'll scroll down a little to see the additional material options down here at the bottom. Currently, the ambient parameter is set to 100%. That means that our fish is soaking up 100% of the ambient light value. As we change this from 100 down to about 30, we can see that the ambient lights in the scene have much less influence on this specific layer. Additionally, we have a diffuse light setting. The diffuse setting describes how much of the layer's original texture is going to be used to light the layer. Currently, it's set at 50, but if we increase this to 100, we can see more of the original color additionally lighting our scene. By changing this value to 0, we can see that the layer is relying on all of the lights in our 3D scene to create its illumination. We'll change this back to 50 and check out the next 3. Specular, shininess, and the metallic value of our layer describe how the highlight bounces back into the camera. The specularity is how much of a highlight we have on our layer. The more specularity the layer has, the more of a highlight it will produce. With our shininess value, if we change this from 5% to 100%, we can see that this layer is actually using the lights value to describe how the highlight looks. So with a higher value, it's actually looking at the cone feather to describe how the highlight's going to look. If we change this back down to 5%, we get a nice bright highlight without being too blown out. Now the metallic property is an older property and really only travels between 2 different positions. Metallic being one side of the equation, and with 100 as its value, behaves more the way metal does when it's reflecting light. By using a value of 0, instead of acting like metal, it acts more like plastic. So with the value of 100, it's metal and has a more gradual fall off of its highlight, making it look a little more matte. With a value of 0, it's more of a plastic look, allowing all of the light to bounce off the entire layer with a really bright highlight. And here on this layer, we can see that our highlight is now everywhere. We'll change this back to 100 and click OK. We'll close up the parameters for this layer by typing A again. Next, we'll go up into the sources and from the 3D renders folder, select the quick grass sequence. We'll simply drag these down anywhere inside our timeline and click OK. This sequence was rendered out of 3D and had its own lights. So while it may look like it's accepting lights, it's really only a 2D layer. And in order to accept the lights of our 3D After Effects scene, we need to turn on 3D for this layer. Now that it's 3D, we can see that we're getting an orange cast, and we just need to change the scale of it so that it encompasses the entire width of our composition. So we'll type S on the keyboard and unlink the dimensions for scale. We'll change the scale dimensions here by clicking and dragging on the X value. We'll also click and drag on the Y value to make it a little bit taller. Then move the position down on the Y-axis. Remember, by adding values to the Y-axis, we're actually pushing it down in 3D space. Next, we want the light in front of the grass, casting light through the grass and onto our goldfish. So because we're on our custom view, we can use our Orbit camera tool by pressing C on the keyboard and orbiting around in order to see all of the different layers. Because our grass and our goldfish are coplanar at this time, we need to modify the Z position of the grass so that it's a little bit closer to camera. We'll change this with a small value of -5. Then with the selection tool, just click on the light, and rather than moving a specific axis, just grab the light itself and move it down. We use C on the keyboard to select the Orbit camera tool again, then navigate back around so we can see the fish and the grass together. Currently, the light is casting shadows and the fish is casting a shadow, but our grass is not. with the quick grass layer selected, we'll type AA on the keyboard to open up the materials options. Here, we're going to change our light transmission value from 0 to 100%. Now we need to turn shadows on in order to see all of these light values, so we'll click Cast Shadows Turned On. The shadows are currently cast back against the fish and the layer behind it, but if we click on Cast Shadows one more time, we'll get the option of Only. This allows After Effects to produce only the shadows that are cast from this 3D layer. The layer itself isn't seen. Because we have our light transmission value set to 100%, we're also getting all of the colors of that 3D layer as part of its shadow. If we toggle the transparency grid in our comp window, we can see that the transparency value is preserved for the entire composition and the shadows aren't cast anywhere there isn't a layer. We'll turn this back off. Simply create a quick RAM preview by typing 0 on the number pad. With a quick RAM preview, you can see how 3D layers interact with lights, allowing you to cast colored shadows across several 3D layers.